Meeting is now, okay, so hi, everybody. Welcome to Seaside Music Management and an intimate evening with the multi-talented, multi-instrumentalist, multi-everything here, Tony Newton. Welcome, Tony. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure and honor. Hi out there to everyone.
Yeah. So, so we're just going to go through some questions and go through a lot of your career here, whatever we can get in here in the next 45 minutes to an hour. I'd like to start with asking you, what were some of the artists that influenced you as a kid, and what did you grow up kind of listening to in your home?
Okay, so, the short answer is that, and I tell everyone this, I'm classically and street trained, right? Because I was going through school and I played music they gave me a plastic saxophone. My neighbor had a piano first, and I used to go over there and play it. But then our family couldn't afford a piano, so then they gave me a plastic saxophone one Christmas, and I played the keys off of that. So when I went to school back in those days, it's not the dinosaur days yet, but so they would give you instruments so you could take them home. And play them, right? And so I started off on clarinet. Now, my stepmother used to play a lot of Little Richard and Elvis and Ray Charles, and I had a clock radio that I'd listen to, like the Blind Boys. I used to listen to a lot, like Wolfman Jack. Wow. And things from the South, right? So all of those things are what influenced me on the commercial side. And then when I would go to school, I'd be playing classical music all the time, right?
Right.
So that's why I say, and then when I got older, I'd be playing in the orchestra and the band at school. And then when I came home, I played jazz and whatever else I wanted to play, right?
Sure. Well, that's great. So what was your first endeavor with music, and with what instrument did you choose to do that with?
Okay, it was saxophone. It was, wow. And I played I played tenor, alto, soprano, and baritone, but mostly it was alto for the most part. And my first concert was with Nina Simone in my first group. And if Eddie Sine is out there, he'll remember that, because that group was called the Mount Royal Clefs. And that's who I was telling you about. We probably will do something in Europe next year, because he's come a long ways. We both started off as teenagers, right? And now we want to play together again. And so the Nina Simone concert was tremendous. It was like, it was at the Masonic Hall in Detroit, which is like Carnegie Hall for me at that time, right? So it was a great gig, a great prestigious gig. I'll never forget it, right?
I'm sure of that. So what was your first, how did you get into Motown, and who discovered you?
Okay, all right. So I left home early when I was about 15 or 16, and I started playing in blues clubs. So I cut some of my hair off and glued it on to make a mustache so I could get it in. I could get in the club, so I didn't look so young, right? And I didn't have a problem. They wouldn't check my ID because I was in the band, right? And so I played with a ton of blues artists, and a lot of them came from Chicago. And John Lee Hooker, well, I played with T-Bone Reed, B.B., John Lee Hooker, Lil Walter. So at the time I was playing with John Lee Hooker in Detroit, and this was when Motown was burgeoning as a record company in the early 60s. And they were looking for people, musicians, and I heard about it, and so I wanted in on it, but I didn't have any connection. Well, one friend, Cornelius Grant, he was already playing with the Temptations, and so he must have told someone there. And so Hank Cosby, the head of A&R at Motown, I didn't know they was coming to see me, right? I'm just playing with John Lee at this blues club.
You think you're on a gig, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the gig, and then I was told that Hank came and saw me play. Right. Next thing I know, Ronnie White from the Miracles, Smokey and the Miracles, is knocking at my door like within 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
And as they say, the rest is history, right? I didn't have to audition because with what happened with that, they wanted Jameson to stay at home and not tour with any of the groups because he was touring with Smokey and the Miracles. And so they wanted to stay home and do sessions. So I took his place with Smokey, right?
Wow.
And so that was a tremendous opportunity, to say the least, right?
Right. And that actually took you on the road. You toured different countries, correct?
Yes, right. So one of the first gigs was the European tour with the Motown Revue. And because I was over there already, I mean, I was going on a tour with Smokey already, and we had done several gigs at the Apollo with a lot of the other Motown acts. And so when we're all at the Apollo, I'm the music director for all of them, right? And bassist. So when I went overseas, it was only natural for me to play with the Funk Brothers behind all of the artists. And you can see the video, it's called Ready, Steady, Go with Dusty Springfield. It's on YouTube, right? And it's clips from her TV show, Ready, Steady, Go.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And it's got Stevie Wonder, Smoke and the Miracles, the Supremes, the Temptations, and Stevie Wonder, and Martha and the Vandellas.
Oh, that's really cool. So people can go see that in YouTube.
Yes, right.
So how did you meet Aretha?
Aretha used to live around the corner from me, right? But I knew her bass player, but I was always with the Motown group because she was always on Atlantic. And so what happened was they called me in to do a recording session here in California to play on her You album. But before that, I can't remember the year. H.B. Barnum is her music director, and I'd done lots of sessions and worked with him. And what happened, this has happened to me a couple of times. Her bassist, his father passed away, and so he couldn't play Carnegie Hall with her. So they called me up in 3 days, right? And so I got to do Carnegie Hall with her in 3 days. And they know I could read the charts and bring something to the table. And so that's how I got the gig, right, for that. And then later on, they called me to do the album You with her.
Wow, that's cool.
It's called You, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, just to kind of reiterate on that, that goes back to how important, and I always feel like it is important to have charts for shows and music, because without that, it would have been tough for you to have that 3 days.
No doubt about it. You know, I try to stress this to all musicians. Some of my best gigs in life are from reading. I couldn't get into Motown unless I could read, period.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, I wouldn't have got the gig if I couldn't read. But because I had a classical background, I could read. Right now, I had a problem first because I was playing clarinets and saxophones, and that's all treble club. So I had to transpose to bass club. And so that was a challenge for me, but I handled it and got over it, right, so that I could read bass club. And so, that was, like I say, everybody, like I couldn't have got the Carnegie Hall gig, I couldn't have got the Motown gig, and I couldn't have been the session player, you know, playing on all these hit records, because all of them had charts.
Right, right.
Now, some of them have note for note, and then other ones just have chords, but you still have to be able to read, right?
Yeah, and have the vibe and be able to play.
You have to bring something to the table, or else you're not going to be there. No matter who you are, right? Because they want you. The music is just a guide, right? And so it's for you to take the music, and because that's why you're there. And
Right.
because they only pick the people that they know will bring something to the table. They already know what you can do before they bring you in on the session. And
Right.
you don't have time to mess around because this, you know, you're talking about $120 to $240 an hour for studio time. They don't have time to mess around, and they're paying you, right?
That's right.
And
That's right.
so that's how professional sessions go. I mean, if you're in a group, self-contained group, that's a different situation altogether, right? You don't need to know how to read, and it's a group situation,
Just a
and you
vibe there.
record as a group, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're a session player, a sideman as they call it, then and it was a way to make money, right? It was a way to make money and get out there and get some foundation and make connections. And so that's what I did, right? Now, I love recording with various artists, you know, because as I explained to a lot of people, like playing with Aretha is not the same thing as playing with Stevie Wonder. It's not the same thing as playing with Little Richard. It's not the same thing as playing with Smokey. Each one of them is like a different child, a different entity, a different person. Number one, the metronomic beat falls different in each one of those people. Say, for example, like James Brown, all of his stuff is on top of the beat, right? Whereas Smokey's stuff, it's a little right on the beat. Then you will find like Mamas and Papas, it hangs back a little bit, right? And so all of these things are subtleties that you have to be aware of, so that when you go to these new sessions, besides you summing up what's good for the artist and for the music, you have to know how to deal with the beat and you know, not be stuck in one way of playing, right? You have to be adjustable and malleable to the music. But the first thing you have to realize is what's good for this artist, right? What direction is this artist going? Because like I said, the music may be there, but it's just a guide, right? Because all of the hits you see, most of the time, the notes are not, you're not playing note for note, right? Yeah, they may write out a bass line, and then they say, do what you want to do, but this is the guide, right? And so that's more or less the story of that, and being able to, I'm really fortunate to be able to play with lots of different people because I can tune into where they're coming from with their music, right? I'm not thinking about myself at all, right? I'm focused on them, their direction and their energy. And so I try to tune into their vibe, and that's what I come with, right?
Yeah.
Whatever's gonna lift them up and bring their sound, you know, to the recording.
Right. Right. So, and I've heard you say this on several occasions. I've heard you tell me it's like the guide and the vibe. It's like they both have to be there. So that's really cool. This is before we come away from the Motown era, I just want to touch base on, is there one specific or two specific incidences that you've done that sticks with you that's like your favorite part of that era for you?
Well, I you know, there's lots of them, right? I love playing the theater circuit. Like people think the Apollo is the only one, when that's farthest from the truth as it could ever be. You got the Uptown in Philadelphia, the Howard in Washington, the Apollo in Harlem, the Brooklyn Fox in Brooklyn, the Fox Theater in Detroit. You know, so we played the circuit, and in this circuit, you know, there's usually 10 acts on the show or something like that.
Right,
and
right, ridiculous amount.
You play all week, and you play you may play 4 shows a day. You definitely play 4 shows on the weekend, and during the week you may play 3, right? And they show movies in between each one of the shows. Oh yeah, the Regal in Chicago. I forgot about that one, right? And so those stick out to me because we were stationary and we played, it wasn't one-nighters, right? Let's put it that way. It wasn't a one-nighter. It was an excursion, and we had lots of fun. And there was lots of other acts on the show. You know, Otis Redding, James Brown, Richard Pryor. I mean, all kinds of people are on the show.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even when we did the Tammy Show, we got the Beach Boys and the Stones and all of that, right? And Marvin Gaye. And so you had, I love doing the Motown tours too, right? Because it was only the Motown acts. And so that's another dimension as opposed to just, you know, doing the theater circuit and only playing like for one act. But that didn't bother me. I love playing with Smokey, and but I did have an opportunity, like let's say if Martha and the Vandellas are on the show, the Supremes are on the show, or Marvin, then I'd have a chance to play with them as well, right? So it was an exciting time, both for live music and recorded music in the 60s. It was tremendous. You know, there'll never be another time like that. Because of the creative energy that was going on then, right? People were doing what they wanted to do musically, and the outlet was there. Even while I was in Detroit, I was still hanging out with people like Ted Nugent and Bob Seger and all of that, which didn't have a damn thing to do with Motown, right? And then you got the blues guys, and so then there's some of the pop. But so as far as I'm concerned, Detroit, and still is to this day, it's got this, it's like a wormhole of creativity, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, it's still producing acts coming out of there. You know, Eminem, Anita Baker. I mean, it's so many, was, not was, I'm trying to think, who's the guy that married to Pamela Lee? I can't think of his name anyway. You know, there's been many, Alicia Keys. There's been a ton of people that have still come out of Detroit, even though it's not producing, you know, like it did. Now, let me mention one other thing. There was lots of people that came to Detroit because they wanted that Detroit sound. And some of them, like from Stax, like I recorded on some Johnny Taylor records, and then there was the Dramatics, What You See Is What You Get. And then Paul Anka came to Detroit because he wanted the Funk Brothers sound, and we recorded So Long City and I Do Love You, right. And so that type of thing was going on because there was damn near a studio every few blocks during that time. There was a club every few blocks, and there was a studio every few blocks. So you didn't have a problem playing music at all, right? I mean, your life was full of music, and it was full of either you playing it or watching it. Right. There was concerts all the time.
Wow, that's very cool. And just take me back really quick. How old were you when you started that journey?
14. That's when I did the the Nina Simone concert. That's you know, I said Tina because when I started one of my first groups, Nova Star, we opened for Ike and Tina. I do remember that, right? And they were on their bus, right? Just like in the movie, right?
Yeah.
They pull up in their bus, and we opened the show. It was fantastic.
That's really cool, really cool.
Yeah.
So take me a step away for a minute into some of your other projects, your own projects, and getting involved with Gary Moore and things like that.
Okay, so my first foray into the artistic field. Okay, so Holland Dozier and Holland are famous producers at Motown that produce and wrote, you know, Stop and Name Love, Baby Love, and all that, and the Four Tops, Reach Out, and all of that, right? So they left Motown and formed their own company, Hot Wax and Victus labels. And so I was the Jameson there, right? And so I played on all of their stuff. And so what they did was they would just do songs and then put them out. And if the song became a hit, then they put a group together or something like that. So they asked me to put the Eighth Day together. And so that was my first group. There's 8 people. And so I've been a leader ever since then, the right leader and producer. That was my first. And we had 2 hits, She's Not Just Another Woman and Call Before the Walk. And so that was my first situation. But then Detroit started to dry up musically. And so I'd been coming to California, 2 times a year at least with Smokey. And so I made a lot of connections here. I knew I didn't want to go to New York because of the weather, and I didn't want to go down south similarly. And I knew that California was wide open. I liked the weather, the women, and the culture.
All goes hand in hand. Yeah.
Right. And so, so I moved out here, and then 2 things happened. First, I called Michael Henderson, who was playing bass with Miles Davis. And so I asked him, I was like, well, do you know any groups or something I can get into? He's like, well, yeah, Tony Williams, they auditioned about 40 cats. Now, Jocko and Jeff Berlin were some of the people that auditioned for that gig, right? So I put a little cassette tape. That's how far it was back. We're talking about 75. And so, so I sent him clips of me playing on various songs, right? So next thing I know, they call me and they're flying me in, and the rest is history.
Vibe.
When it comes to Tony Williams' Lifetime. And so that's a big influence on my life, as you know, because I'm still doing fusion. I'm still writing songs. I learned how to write songs at Motown, and then with Tony, then we created the fusion genre and worked that, and so I was extremely happy, and I believe I really have a strong passion for fusion, but I also have strong passion for songs as well. That's why my albums have both instrumentals and songs on it. So after that, what happened is Columbia Disco came along and kind of blew all of that out of the way, for Columbia. That's the label we were on. So then about a year later, so a couple of years later, Gary Moore and Mark Nossoff wanted to put a group together, Gary from Thin Lizzy at the time, right? And so they called me because they had already heard stuff I did on Motown and with Tony. So same thing again, right? They asked me to come down and play with them, and that's what happened, and the rest is history. That's right. There's only one audition that I've never got, and that's with Frank Zappa. And that's because he was writing shit 6 letter lines above the staff and wanted you to read it as quick as, like that. When people don't write 6 letter lines above the staff, right? And so he wasn't looking for feel, he was looking for just how fast you could play the notes, right?
Right.
And so, but that was okay with me, right? I still respect and honor Frank for what he does, and I just didn't get that gig, right? And so that's one of the few gigs that I didn't, get. And so, but I just kept on going because there are other gigs. And so, so after so we got the Lifetime. And we got, so after the Lifetime, there was, okay, let's say after Gary Moore and Z-Force. So then I came back and I put a group together called Gravity. And that's Alan Pasqua from the Lifetime and Danny Spanos from Sly. And that was my first album, Mysticism and Romance, right? And so I had a bunch of groups in Detroit before moving out here, like North Star, Newton's, Newton's North Star, and a couple of other ones. And then I've had some groups out here as well in California, and but they didn't take off, right, because of personality differences. Like Newton's Law, we was the first group to sign with Interscope and Jimmy Iovine,
Really?
and but it didn't work out between the executives and the personalities and the band. And I decided at that point, okay, I'm tired of dealing with lead singers and all that, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to do it my damn self. So that's when I started doing my own thing and just going that direction, right?
Now that's where I'm going to kind of go with you here. And I don't know if you've always been into the rock funk fusion or where that kind of happened along the way, and
Well,
bring
let
us
me
into
explain
that. Yeah.
Okay, so the rock funk fusion, okay, it's all there already, right? The funk comes from Detroit, you know, like George Clinton, and Motown is basically funky, right? That's why they call us the Funk Brothers, right? But we can play not so funky, but it's basically another dimension of funk. Okay, so the rock, so it's funk bass and it's rock, high energy and intensity that I like. And then the fusion aspect is the improvisational and instrumental approach, right? That's why there's songs and instrumentals. So that's why I say my genre is funk rock fusion.
Yeah, it's the big combination there.
Yeah.
So the White Light collection and some of the material that you put together, STS and things like that, should you know, share some of that, how that came about.
Well, you know, with the White Light collection, there's one other album before that, Thunderfunk Fusion. That's it, what TNT Extreme, that's the direction of TNT Extreme. And so the first album, we did quite a few things. That's when I did Gustav Holst's Mars from the Planets. A lot of people, Gustav Holst is a famous composer of the 40s who wrote the Symphony of the Planets. And Mars was one of the planets, right? But at the time, NASA was, you know, sending rockets up to Mars and things like that. So I said, this is a great piece because of the motor, bah, 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 right? And when they put a hip hop beat underneath that, and it's a tremendous piece, right? And so I did that on the first album, and I don't know if you heard One People, One Planet, because people are begging me now to put that out because of all that's going on, right? And I'm definitely considering it. So the first album, Thunderfunk Fusion, I loved it, and by the time my Light collection came along, I mean, what was happening is I said, okay, I'm ready to do the second album. And so some of these songs are calling me, Tony, put me on the album. And they're like 20, 30 years old, right? Like Miracles of Hope, even Dr. Dance and stuff like that. And they're just calling me. And so, and I heed that message. I'm going to do it, right? Because I know that if it's a good piece of music, it's timeless, right? And then when it's re-recorded, it's fresh. Yeah. So I wanted to stretch out more on the White Light collection than I did on the Thunderfunk Fusion, right? So I wanted some message songs in there. I mean, basically, I feel like I've always wanted to be an ambassador for music, but higher than that, my mission on the planet is to help people reach their full potential through music, right? Whether it's songs or instrumentals, it will still, you'll hear something that'll break something loose in you that you will feel, oh, well, I can do that. Or if you got a direction you want to go, not that you're copying me, but you're going to feel the energy in the music that's going to sort of like set you free to your own potential. So you start thinking different. Right. That's basically the direction is to get you thinking freer, which is going to open you up to your own personal possibilities, right? And so that's what I want to do with White Light Collection. And I don't want to, I'm thinking I want some commercial stuff on there, but then I want some no holds barred stuff on there. And I don't care, right? So I'm going to write a 13-minute piece called Follow Your Heart.
Yes.
But now, Follow Your Heart, I want to be a combination of Shaft and Pop was a Rolling Stone, Newton style, right?
Yeah.
And so, but more advanced, right, for now's contemporary time. So, and I didn't care how long it was going to turn out to be. I just wanted to, it's just like when I did Inspirations of Love with Tony. I wanted to write a piece for him to do a solo, and I wanted it to be orchestral, and it was artistic, right, more so than commercial. But my thinking is, if it's artistic enough and it's deep enough and it can touch people, then that's what I want. You can call it what you want, commercial or artistic. The main thing that it touches somebody, and reaches the person's soul and spirit. And that's what I'm after in whatever way I'm composing and playing. That's my goal and aim, right?
Yeah, which is cool because we all have it somewhere inside,
Yes,
and so you're trying to let everybody know you got to bring it out. Whatever
Yes,
capacity.
right,
That's
right,
really cool.
because there are so many people that ignore their gifts, right? And when we're all creative beings, everything around us is being created by somebody, even us. We call, some people call him God, but he's the creator of the universe, right?
Yes.
And creative intelligence is the bottom line. And so we should not ignore it under any circumstances, because that's our greatest gift. And I don't mean necessarily being a music artist or an artist or anything like that, because everything is creative, not just music, right? That's why I say I want to inspire people to reach their potential, whatever it is, because each one of us have our own unique, authentic gifts, right? Whether it be a business person or a doctor or whatever. You don't have to be an artist to use creativity, because everything uses creativity.
That's right. That's right. And tell us a little bit about the award, the 2020 Vision Award.
Okay. So,
that was, I loved seeing that. That was great.
That was a shock to me, right? It was
Not
a
to
shock.
me.
I had worked with the Academy on some other tunes, right? And then I received this email one day, and it says I was chosen for the Artist of the Year Vision Award. And so I didn't really take it seriously, right? So I watched the presentation, and then, because I thought I was going to get the award for Best Funk Fusion, because that's what I've been working on, right? And some other person that didn't have nothing to do, that wasn't funky nor fusiony, they won the award. And I almost turned the damn thing off at that point, right? And so, but I hung in there. I was really depressed about it. And then, this is the last announcement they make, right? And they say, the award goes to Tony Newton, TNT and Trim. I say, what?
Cool. Yeah.
Right. And it surprised me, and I'm still on a high about it, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to make the most about it. And I'm really honored, because at least it shows that someone recognizes the work and the hard energy that goes into that, and what I've been doing, right? So, and it was worldwide, so it was, it's a tremendous honor, really, for me. And I'm really happy about that. That's my phone ringing, but it's going to stop ringing any minute.
That's okay. That's okay.
I think I'm fine to, okay.
That, that award was so well deserved. I mean, it was just, it was just so great to see, and you deserved every bit of it. So
okay, thank you so much.
Enjoy that, of course. Yeah. And then I wanted to touch a little bit of base on.
Oh, well, you didn't talk about G-Force, right?
Did we go there?
Yeah, we went there only briefly.
Okay, so you want to go back?
Yeah, because That was around
I'm a fan.
1980. Right,
Yeah, I
right.
love that.
So
Yeah.
I always wanted to be in the rock, in that genre, and that was the closest I got, right? I know, okay, this is the real thing, right? So I'm playing with Gary and Mark and all of that. And so the funny, strange part about this is that Don Arden, he was the person that was the owner of the label Jet Records. And he had ELO and Olivia Newton-John, Black Sabbath, all these acts. And then, but Sharon is his daughter, right? And at that time, Sharon Osbourne, I'm talking about.
Right.
Her name is Sharon Arden before she became Osbourne, right? So Ozzy shows up at our rehearsals, right? With his hands on his knuckles, because he's trying to woo Sharon, right? And so we wrote some songs for him, but he didn't like them. They wasn't hard enough for him, right? But then we went on a tour with Whitesnake, right? David Coverdale and Whitesnake. That was our tour, and that was fantastic. And Ozzy would be at every gig, behind stage, because he's still, working on Sharon.
I'm sitting on Sharon.
Right, exactly. So that was an exhilarating, another once in a lifetime. I mean, for me, it was a very exhilarating experience to play high energy rock and roll with a guy like Gary, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we can move back on. Listen.
Go ahead and answer.
You expect this to happen, right? You expect this to happen. I'm on an interview, and then I get 1,000 calls. Right.
It's probably a power call, I called it.
Yeah, right. So where were we at? Where do we leave off at?
With Sharon and
yeah, I mean, but yeah, so we'll move on to what was that next question after after White Light, I think it was, right?
Oh, okay. So yeah, then we talked about the award, and then I was going to go into
an award.
I wanted to ask you about just to kind of touch on, well, two things. One is your piano playing, which threw me for a loop the first time I watched you do that. I'm not quite sure. I'm still trying to figure it all out, But
right. So let me explain that. As I mentioned, the first instrument I ever touched was a piano, because that was at a neighbor's house, and I used to go over there and play the piano. But my parents couldn't afford a piano, so therefore I got into woodwinds, and because I could bring, they gave them to you at school, and you could bring them home. So right. I was even singing back then as well, and so I sang first, because I remember it being in the choir. But after my voice changed, I was so wrapped up into playing instruments, I said, okay, I'm not going to sing anymore. I'm just going to concentrate on, instrumental, yes. Playing the instrument. So, so as the forces would have it, I went on a spiritual retreat. And on the spiritual retreat, the notion, I wouldn't call it a notion, the intuition came to me, okay, it's time for you to get back to piano, right? Because I went back to school, right? But at this time, I'm saying to myself, okay, how am I going to achieve this? Okay, so I'm going to go back to school, because I know I have to practice 6-8 hours a day if I go to school for piano and music theory and composition, and that's going to get my chops back up. And so I worked at a piano factory so I could get a piano. I practiced, and I had teachers. I wanted to have a pedigree just like I did with bass. So I studied with teachers that had been taught by Chopin and Ernst Danieli. And so that was my pedigree. Because I wanted to be on the level both as a composer and as a performer, pianist of any master that's historic, right? And so, but I knew I wasn't going to get there by just saying it. And so
Right.
I had to put in the work, because they say, you'll hear the word 10,000 hours. I think it takes 20,000 hours to really get there, right?
Yeah.
The 10 is you just getting started, right? So, so I was there, and so all throughout school, all to get my degree, that was my focus. And in the meantime, while I'm going back to college, one summer I get the idea about how I'm tired of hearing the same old sounds, and
Yeah.
so I know there's other sounds out there. So I meditated on it for a couple of weeks, and it says, okay, the answer's in the overtone series. So I'm driving down the street one day, and I always like to go to used bookstores, but I'm guided to this one used bookstore where this book is on music theory from England by this professor, Ebenezer Prout. And he had the overtone series drawn out much further than any of the American books, right? And it gave me the relations that I needed. And then I saw that in the overtone series, the fifth and the fourth were the first active tones. And for those that know about Gregorian chant, it's based on fifths and fourths, but they just double stack them. Whereas I have 3 to 12. And so, so the minute I got down and started experimenting with these intervals and playing different chords, I just thought of I was working with sound color, right? And that was my approach. And so I worked out a system, and then I had to codify all the chords, like, major and minor. So I had to find the same thing with the Novophonics. And then I had to put it into music, real music. And so Star Romance was the first piece I ever wrote using Novophonics quintal quartal harmony. That's what it is. So I found 15,000 new chords, and the way I put it is, we already have red, green, and blue in the musical spectrum. So this is the rest of the color spectrum for both the listener and the composer, right?
Wow.
So it expands our dimension of musical sound.
Yeah, it's no
So
wonder
that's
I'm confused.
Novophonics
Yeah,
and how that came about, right?
that's really cool. I mean, it's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, right.
You come up with that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
it took me a while. The word nova as burst of a newborn star and its energy. And that's what, so nova and phonic meaning sound, right?
Yeah.
That's how I came, because I wanted to find, because if I say quintal quartils of somebody, they look at me like, they don't know what I'm talking about, right? But that's technically what it is, right?
Yeah.
And, there's a book called The Source of Scales and Harmonies. And Coltrane, everybody, Coltrane studied out of it. It's written by Nicholas Slonimsky. And so all the advanced players have studied the book, and I heard about the book. And of course I had to have it. And I went out and I studied it. And it has some beginnings of this type of stuff, right? But there's composed, like Beethoven was writing in fifths on his deathbed. Then we had Debussy and Hindemith and Schoenberg. All of them experimented with this, but they didn't do as much homework as I did, right? And so I was able to, because I was thinking about it in a scientific way as well as music. So that allowed me to, as well as I had a friend that was an astrophysicist, right? So we did all the numbers that goes with all the stuff. We did the overtones, the undertones, for all of the chords. And Kim, you wouldn't believe, you can see God in those numbers because they sync up at different points, just like binary numbers, right?
Yeah.
At 32, 28, 64, at 128. I mean, it's just amazing, because what happens is that after you do the third, fifth, you do the root, the fifth, and the ninth. I'm not talking about a 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, because Novophonic chords don't have any thirds in it. So we don't have no 3 and 7. That's a 1, 5, 9. So the minute you do the 9 with the 5th and the root, it catapults a whole bunch of overtones. So that's why it sounds really rich and resonant to anybody that hears it.
Oh, yeah.
And as we know, the Pythagoras, the whole universe is numbers and physics. And our nervous system is the same way. It's vibrations. That's what's that. Vibrating energy,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what led me to this, because I wanted to just tap into all of that, because like I said, I knew there were some other sounds, and I was starting hearing the same old chords and sounds, right? So
And you were going to find them. Yep.
yeah, exactly.
And you did. That's
Right,
fantastic.
right.
That's fantastic. So you do, I mean, you do offer, I mean, you're so rounded, it's ridiculous, but you do offer like keynote speaking,
Yes,
master
right.
classes, college,
Yeah.
you do that kind of thing as well. So sometimes you
Yeah.
travel around. That's,
Right.
you know, that's
Because
another
I like to
extension.
share my information
Yeah.
with people, and I have so much of it, a ton of it's archived, right? And you know, after, like I said, I've written 15 books, and all of them are not even published, right? But I self-publish them. Like I have the Bass Bible. Only a few people know about the Bass Bible. And then there's the Art and Science of Music Composition. I have them done. They're both 500-page books, but that was before computers. So now I need to scan them and find somebody to scan them, right? And then put them together. And but I do have How I Discovered Novaphonics on Amazon, right? And it's a smaller book. It's for music appreciators, right?
Yeah.
The historical basis and how I discovered and developed it, right?
Yeah, and that's cool. It's unfortunate, you know, it's not unfortunate, but you know, the technology brings us around. I'm old school. Like I pick up a book, you know, before I'm going to read it online. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I like
right,
a book, you know.
I do too. I'm the same way. I prefer a book, even though I do a lot of research online, but I'm still gonna print out whatever I need.
Right. I mean, you are gonna, and the world's, you know, the world's online now too, Kindles and iPads and computers. So it's nice to have it transformed, but there's nothing can replace a book. Just like to me, nothing can replace an album. You know, a vinyl album to me. You just, you know, you can't digital downloading just doesn't replace that.
Right.
You know, I actually like the cracking in the album. You know, I like to hear that. That to me is a good sound. So yeah, but so, and just before we close out here, I want to just touch, and you know, I know we talked about this in depth, but however far you want to go with it, about what the future is in your, you know, your 360 concept that we're talking about putting together with you. So as much as
I've explored some, okay, for all you people out there that don't know what 360 is, 360 means there's the 360 audio and there's 360 visual. So the 360 audio, like you can hear it in my piece from the White Light Collection, Romance. If you put on the headphones, there's the sound encompasses. There's called ambisonic 360 sound. And so the sound is not just left and right stereo or surround sound. It's surround sound, but it's way different than surround sound because you can move it up and down. What you cannot do with surround sound, it's like you're in a space, a bubble, right? And then the music can be close, it can be far, it can be over here, and it can be swirling around you up here. And visually, 360 is the same thing. There's special cameras that do the front and the back so that you can experience the environment and have control over it with your mouse. You can just scroll around the environment. Like if we're doing a concert, you can see who's in the audience or yourself. You don't have to wait for the camera to do it. You can zoom in on me. You can zoom in on anybody in the band. You can look at us from the back, from the front, all of this. And I think it's it's the next level of entertainment and music expression for numerous reasons, right? Because of the sound and because of the visuals, because it's like you're actually there. right? And you
Yeah.
have control over what you want to see,
Yeah.
right? And that's what makes it so exciting, because you have control over the environment. And that's why I think it's definitely good for the times that we're in now,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm really excited about doing a 360 concept concert. And I want to add other dimensions as well, like we talked about,
Yeah, we're going to
other
be doing that.
entertaining
Yep.
dimensions, right? And but I've already done some experimenting at rehearsals. Like I did one with Red House, right, where we shot at 360 at a rehearsal. And I posted online. I'm going to send it to you, and people can experience that. And so it's being done now, but not everybody has tapped into it. Like I showed you, Billie Elias. She's all over it, right? She just tapped into it,
Yeah.
and she's using it on all of her gigs, right? But I want to do one where it's more environmental as opposed to a stage and an audience, right? So if you do something in a round, you can just scroll all around the room instead of the same old setup, right?
Right, right.
And if you use 360 sound, you don't necessarily have to use 360 sound, but if you use 360 sound, you need the headphones, right? So
Yeah.
that you don't need any special speakers or speaker setup, right?
Right.
But it's a really exciting frontier, the whole world of 360. And
Yeah.
I'm raring to go because I've already experimented with it, and it works really good. And I know the audience will love it.
Yeah.
Because they have control like they've never had before.
Right, right. And you know, from where I come from, I'm always trying to give that audience experience through all my shows, you know, as you know, and
Yeah,
that's my
right.
big deal. So doing this with you and bringing this to the audience allows the audience, like you said, to take control, and they can almost go around and go where they want. They can almost feel like
Right.
they're on the stage, feel like
Yeah.
they're, you
Right.
know, or
Right.
they want to see what kind of strings is on the guitar, you know,
Yeah,
whatever it
right,
is, they can
right,
do it.
right.
So that's really cool. I'm really, really excited to do that
Yeah,
in the
right.
future with you. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Mhm.
so that's going to be a lot of fun. And
Yeah, that's going to be a tremendous lot of fun when we put that together.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
looking
yeah.
forward to it, right?
We have to do something. I mean, and that's my last question to you. I mean, we've all been locked down. I know I've had you, you
Yeah.
know, on before, and you know, we obviously communicate often. But what is it that you're doing with yourself on the pandemic scenario? I mean, are you, you know, are you doing building any other projects, or what are you doing with your
Yes,
time?
okay, so as I tell everyone, now is the time to tap into your creativity because you have the time, right? And so and now's the time to think about it. So I'm tremendously busy. I mean, I have my tech projects, like I'm developing eStream Vision, right? Now I was forced, and sometimes you go into things kicking and screaming. Like my cable bill went from 138 to 2 something, right? It's like, oh, this stuff has got to go, right? So then I have to figure out, okay, how I'm going to get some entertainment. So being a research person like I am in comprehension, I just researched the hell out of it. And being a computer tech person, so I developed this portal for people that can have access to all of these free TV and movies on the internet from streaming, because streaming is the next frontier, not cable. Cable is losing ground since 2016 because they're so damn greedy. Right.
No, that's true.
And so, so now, you know, I build my own computers and all of that. And so now I have a piece of hardware that I'm going to add to it, and you hook it up to your smart TV, right? And upgrade your smart TV, and you go directly to the portal, and you can stream anything without any problems, right? And so I'm really excited about eStream Vision, as well as I'm working on some EDM music. I'm doing the homeless. I'm doing a couple of homeless projects, writing
really
songs
nice.
for the
Yeah.
homeless, right? And so I'm just as busy as ever, right? And so I think it's a real great time. And I just want to say to everyone out there, you know, don't fall prey to the hate and the darkness, because we each should be a light. Each one of us should be a light to the world. Right. And that's how we can make this whole thing better than what it was. And because it's a wake-up call anyway.
Right.
And like I mentioned, sometimes we have to go kicking and screaming, right?
Yeah.
But once we get on the other side, we can see a different perspective.
Yeah,
right?
like look what you did about it, you know. So it's almost a scary question to ask you what you're doing with idle time. Makes me a little nervous, you know, because you're inventing or creating or doing something that's
Yeah, the reward came out of it, right? The reward came out of it. All these new projects, East Dream Vision came out of it, and you know, I'm not holding back.
Yeah, no,
right?
it's great. It's great, and I can't thank you enough. It's been such a blessing to not only know you, but to be able to get involved in your musical world. And you're an absolute, you know, maestro. You're just the master in this
business. Thank you so
and,
much.
An all-around great person. That. Yeah, seriously.
I thank you for that. And you as well are the same, because you've hung in there for all the music artists and musicians, and you believe in the real thing, not just commercial, not just money or commercialism. You know, you support the artists in the artists and the artistic work. And those type of people can't be found these days, right? They're far and few in between. So I salute Kim.
Thank you very much. It's all in my heart. It's all you guys that make it, you know, that make it happen for me.
So
without
where are we now? So I want to be able to say, let me know, and so I can say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah. So so thank you so much for being here. It's been great, and we're going to do it again soon. But hopefully, we're going to have you here. We're going to start these 360 shows, do a lot of stuff with you, and you have a great website that's got a ton of information. What's the website, Tony Newton?
TonyNewtonMusic.com.
Music.com. So I encourage everyone to go there. And
go to TonyNewton.bandcamp.com to see my catalog of albums. All right.
Yeah.
That's the latest thing that I put together, and it has my symphony, the solo piano work, both of the White Light albums, the Thunder Funk Fusion album, even has Agamemnon the musical. I'm going to put up some Shakespeare sonnets and a couple of other things. It has my first album, Mysticism and Romance, and it's got my idea is to put my full catalog up there.
Yeah, that's
and you
really
can
cool.
you can listen to the stuff 3 times before you have to make a move.
That's perfect. Yeah. And I encourage everyone to go and check out these sites, because it's nothing like it. So really appreciate your time, and we're going to talk to you again real soon. And hopefully, with all of this goes away, we'll be able to get back on the stages.
Right, exactly. I thank you so much, Kim, and I appreciate all of the fans that are out there watching. What happened to our questions? Did we get any questions?
Well, you know what? I think that we did, but because I rolled through, but they're going to be on our Facebook feed, and we're going to be able to go back and individually answer those.
And still answer them, right?
That's right. As well as this will be able to be relaunched as well for anybody who missed it, because we did it. And we put this up in 24 hours, so we're going to be able to relaunch it all. So yeah, we'll have questions and all of that.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's a complete pleasure and honor, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Love you
too. Love you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.